Hi, I'm President Deniz A. Erdal. Welcome to the second episode of the Fireside Cast, the only presidential podcast in Upper Arlington. Before we get into the conversation, I would like to make a few statements regarding last week's episode. Last week, I stated that the new pool would be an Olympic-sized swimming pool. However, the new pool will actually be 25 meters by 25 feet. Also, last week I was unsure whether students have to scan out of the building. However, in actuality, students must scan out only when leaving the campus. Today I'm joined in the studio by Kevin Colgan.
Hello, Dennis. Thank you for having me.
So, Kevin, I know you're a member of the UA Community Theater, and last week I believe they announced that this year's fall production will be The Arsonists. Can you give us a little bit information regarding the UA Community Theater and The Arsonists?
Well, the UA Community Theater, it's hosted in the little theater. It's instead of doing the musicals, they do plays, and they'll do the fall play every year, and then they'll also do the little shows. This year they'll be doing The Arsonist, as you stated. The Arsonist is essentially about fake businessmen who are actually arsonists and terrorize the city. I know that the little theater is very small, and last year when I was in the Diary of Anne Frank, we used that smallness as essentially just to create that claustrophobic effect. But I don't know what they're going to be doing with the size restraint for this show, because there's not enough room to do a lot, and I don't really know how they're going to be doing it.
I see. And so when is the release date for your show?
Well, auditions will be held sometime. I don't really know. I don't even know if I'm going to be auditioning, and I have no idea when the actual production is going up.
Well, sometime in the fall, I presume.
Yes.
Well, be sure to watch The Arsonists this fall. Moving on to our next topic. A few years ago, the Macy's in Kingsdale Mall closed down, and the area was bought by Kroger. However, Kroger never actually tore down the old building to build a new one.
Yeah.
And also, some people in the community have been advocating for a community for a community center there in that area. I know UA is one of the few cities that doesn't actually have one. That would be an interesting thing to consider. What is your take on this topic?
Well, I know Kroger, they're trying to figure out what they want to do with it, and I know that a lot of UA residents are wanting to create it into the community center, but they would have to buy it from Kroger, which that will cost a lot of money, and then actually renovating it and creating a building for the community center will also cost a lot of money. And since we're already building two new schools, the high school and Windermere, and then renovating the other elementary schools, it's going to be a lot of money that we're already paying for. And then just paying for the community center, that would be, on top of that, it's a lot of money that would have to pay for in taxes. And, speaking of, the new school, there has recently been, budgeting for the school We've gone over the budget. Right now the budget is $110 million, and they don't want to go over that, but from the plans, it's gone $15 million over. And that is mainly due to, there's a bit of a height difference between Holyoke and Brandon, about 8 feet, and that would set them back about $5 million. And then the new tornado shelter system for the school, that was also going to be another $10 million, but somehow they were able to not have those new tornado shelters because they made a proposal before that law came in act. What are your thoughts on that, having the new tornado shelters not implemented into the new school?
Well, I don't think it's really too big of an issue. although we do get one or two tornado warnings per year, I don't think we've actually had a tornado in central Ohio in the past 50 years. So I don't think that's really going to be too much of an issue. However, regarding the budget, I believe the original design called for a 4-story building, and now that's been cut down to a 3-story building.
Yes.
And also, in sort of a connection to the tornado thing, if you're on the ground floor in the center of a building, of a 3-story concrete building, I think you're pretty safe during a tornado.
Yeah. What they're also doing, because of the, they're over budget right now, they're not going to be moving the stadium. So the stadium will stay where it is, and they'll keep the turf, the waste stands, and all the light poles. Those will all stay, and everything else will be renovated and improved, which is, it's a lot different. But they also said that they were not going to, mess with the baseball stadiums. But that's originally where the new school was.
Well, where are they going to fit the new school then? That's the question.
Yeah, and they're also saying that they want the front entrance to be on Zollinger.
Yes.
So, but how are they? I don't really know how they're going to do that. Are they going to put a bunch more parking in front of the school, and then you go through the parking to get to the front entrance, or they're?
Well, I think if they're going to still keep the field, the football field, the baseball fields, then they're probably going to put parking lots where the current school is, and then they'll probably build the new school sort of in the practice field area and where the lifting rooms are, and possibly near the tennis courts, perhaps a wing of the building might be there. However, I don't think, I guess they're going to be building up more vertically rather than horizontally. So if they do that, they might be able to fit the entire school there.
Yeah, but they're also saying that the new school design will be essentially the old school design, just higher, because there's an influx of students coming, and they're also going to have a bunch of parking. So they're going to have a bigger building overall. So I honestly don't know how they're going to do it. I guess we'll have to wait and see until there's either more information or we actually get the new building.
Especially when cutting the 4th floor, that does really cut a lot of their options. And though on the bright side, I don't think UA is going to be getting much bigger anytime soon, because there is virtually no undeveloped land left here in Upper Arlington. And so I don't think the student population will be increasing more anytime soon.
Well, I mean, there has been an increase, and they're just essentially trying to counteract that with creating a new school, that one, so we don't have the leaky old school, and two, so it can actually house those students in an actual school.
Yes, yeah.
Speaking of the school, in terms of parking, I know that last week that you were talking about parking and weren't really sure about that. I believe what they are doing is that when they're doing construction, the parking that is near the tennis courts, anything along that path from Holyoke to Brandon, that will all be gone. You will no longer have parking there during construction. And I also believe that they're trying to get more parking in the new school. Right now, in the old school, the school that we're in right now, has about 500 parking spaces. I know that originally they were going to go for 500 in the new school as well, but that doesn't seem like it's enough already, so they're trying to push for 600 spaces, so 100 extra. What are your thoughts on that?
I do think that would be a nice thing, having more parking space in the new school, because right now I believe there's a lottery for parking spots, and that's even with without construction. So even right now there is a limitation, and again, with the reduced space, how are they going to fit that in? more 100 more parking spaces. I think it might be something. Well, something to consider might be building a garage, perhaps.
Yeah, they were talking about an underground garage, but then they decided that that's probably not a good idea. They didn't really want that happening. I don't really know why, but I feel like it's probably a good logical explanation why.
I see. So, Kevin, to transition into some more global events, what's your take on the recent Kavanaugh hearings that occurred this week?
Wow. Well, I think right now Kavanaugh is in a good position of getting into the Supreme Court. I think there's just been a bunch of noise, a bunch of Democrats trying to get him to not get into it, but I think they don't have enough evidence to keep him out of it. I feel like they're not really, they haven't really found anything, and they're trying to, delay it. But I think it's obvious that he's going to get into it unless they find some breakthrough that he's done or said.
I see. And so now, considering that last week a new senator was appointed by the Arizona governor to replace John McCain's seat, the Republicans now once again have a 51-seat majority.
Yes.
And so this will go to the Senate, and Kavanaugh will get confirmed. There's no doubt about it, especially considering that a number of Democratic senators in red states, such as Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, would probably have to vote for Kavanaugh because she's facing a very tough reelection bid in North Dakota, where she's actually behind in the poll numbers now. North Dakota is a state which Donald Trump carried by more than 30 points, and so that is going to be tough for the Democrats to try and retain this upcoming election. However, I do think there might be a slight chance for the Democrats to actually take some pickups here. One of the possible states, I think, where that's possible is Tennessee. In Tennessee, the Democratic candidate is Phil Bredesen, and he was the former Tennessee governor 2 terms, and when he left office, he had a 65% approval rating. So I think that Tennessee could be a possible flip for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a potential flip. However, there has been Democrats who are also praising Kavanaugh for being a good person overall and having fair opinions. And then in terms of there's a bunch of Democrats saying that they didn't get time to review the 30,000 documents that were just released. But these are all documents from when Kavanaugh was the secretary in the Bush term. So these are just a bunch of files that most likely don't have very much information in them, and these documents most likely will not change the minds of any Democrats or Republicans.
Well, it's certainly not going to change the minds of any Republicans or Democrats, because it's pretty obvious that everyone's going to be voting along party lines. However, I do think it would be important for the American people to see, how Brett Kavanaugh acted under the Bush administration, because under the Bush administration there were quite a few controversial things with the Patriot Act and Guantanamo Bay, and so I guess understanding Brett Kavanaugh's legal perspective on those things and whether they violate the Constitution or not, I think that would be an interesting or an important thing to know about him before appointing him to the highest court of the land.
Yeah, essentially.
Yes. So I think in the 2018 election, I do think that the Democrats will probably be taking the House of Representatives. They've got about 7% lead in the polls nationally. I know at the beginning of summer their lead was closing in, and it was about 45 to 46, but now it's about 47 to 40% for the Republicans. And so I do think the Democrats might be able to take the House. However, I think the Senate will probably retain its Republican majority, however, not with the filibuster breaking 60 votes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems facing the Democrats right now is that their platform right now is basically just anti-Trump.
Yes.
There is no other platform other than
Well,
anti-Trump. However, on the flip side with the Republicans, it is basically just pro-Trump.
mm-hmm.
So I think this election we're going into will sort of be a referendum on President Trump rather than a competition between people running for office.
Yeah, but the Democrats also have they're also going on the basis of gun rights, firearms, and then I believe that the Democrats are actually looking for a new face for the Democratic Party. So they'll probably not have Hillary be running for president, and they'll probably have someone else this year, and they'll probably run on the idea of having more restricted firearms.
And that's one thing I'm looking forward to. Right after the midterm elections, we'll start to see people announcing their bids for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting to see which Democrats might be willing to run. I know Joe Biden, he said that he might run. He hasn't confirmed or denied it. However, he said, "I am not running." That's what he said to reporters late last week. And also, I believe Elizabeth Warren might announce a bid. However, I think an interesting thing to consider is, will President Trump be facing will President Trump be forced to go in to a Republican primary? Because I know although President Trump has a very strong base, I know there are a number of Republicans who might be willing to contest him in the primary.
Mm-hmm. He'll definitely have some competition within the Republican Party. I think that just the way that he's been acting recently, that might also jeopardize him getting into his second term as well.
And I think one of the only reasons that President Trump was elected was because he was running against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I mean, he's also just going on the base of, all basically just the Republican ideals, the free market and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and also, filling up the spaces in the courts with more Republican justices.
Mm-hmm. Well, however, he has sort of strayed away from the Republican orthodoxy
Yes.
with the tariffs and breaking up the free trade agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada, and going into a trade war with China and European countries. I think this will start affecting U.S. consumers pretty soon. The tariffs might start affecting the price of electronics. Those are sure to go up with the tariffs on China. And I wonder if this might at all affect the midterm election turnout.
It might, since he's going against the Republican ideals. I believe the tariffs will also be affecting the industries because they'll have raw materials like metals. Those also have a tariff, at least from China, and importing and exporting. So that is a major impact for the Republican Party. And I honestly don't know how that's going to turn out.
I see. Well, thank you for joining the conversation, Kevin.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Join us next week to talk about Student Council announcing 80s as the theme for homecoming. Major funding for the Fireside Cast has been provided by Serpent Cinematography,
Thunder Strike Game Productions,
TV Productions,
the Combat Robot Kev Foundation, empowering robotics engineering since 2016.
and from contributions from listeners like you. Thank you.
If you'd like to sponsor an episode and have your name mentioned in on the episode, contact a cabinet member for further information.